killed something like 1,000 Japanese. And when you think that Suji, who was the intelligence officer in Malaya, the total Japanese killed in the whole Malaya-Singapore campaign was 3,507. And the combatant troops in Timor, after we capitulated, they thought that we were marvellous, and they treated us really quite well. And Peter, I've said I've learned a lot of things in my life, and I had a lot of my early Orroroo experiences confirmed as a prisoner of war. There's a greater camaraderie between people at the bottom than there is at the top. I mean, the generals, where are the generals? I don't know where they are. Victoria Barracks in Melbourne, and we're fighting these chaps. And they thought, as I say, they thought it was good. What puzzled them, when we broke through finally, it was a bayonet charge, and they're pretty messy situations. And the Japs were brave, the Japs on the ground, they would feign death. If they were not dead, when we went through them, they'd shoot from behind. So the word went round quickly to bayonet any Japanese who was on the ground. And they wanted to know why so many Japanese soldiers had so many bayonet wounds. And the record was 17. One fella had 17. And when they were told, they were told the truth, that they were so brave that they feigned a death, and then they thought that was marvellous.
Really?
Yeah, we then helped to burn their corpses. Made a huge pit with wood, and they had all these little urns, and we'd just sling them in there, and they'd burn. Then they went round collecting ashes.
Yes.
The ashes had the names of soldiers on them, but I think the ashes were mostly Timorese wood.
Yes. Yeah. Now, one thing that's curious to me, with the loss of Penfui, do you know what happened to the aviation fuel that was left there?
It was burnt.
Was it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
And a party was left, led by Brian Rofe. There were two officers left, Brian Rofe and a fellow called Shields. And they tossed to see which one would remain with this RAF party, which was burning all the fuel. And I think Brian Rofe won the toss and decided then that he'd stay and not lead. So they burnt that on that would be the morning of the 19th of February. Then they left, and they went up the road. We had this base where Dr. Les Poitevin had his field hospital at Jamplong. Now I had been asked to reconnoitre Jamplong, and I did, and I knew the area. And at one stage I advised the Colonel that we ought to get to Jamplong, get out of this ring. He took no notice, of course.
This is Colonel Leggett, is it?
That's Leggett, yeah. Oh, God. Anyway, the Rofe party had breakfast on the morning of the 19th with, I think it was one of the companies, I think it might have been D Company of the 2nd 40th Battalion. Then they took off, and they passed the junction at Assoe Ridge, and were past there when they saw the paratroops landing. And so it's hard to know exactly how many there were, but they were concerned. They got to Jamplong, and it was in Jamplong that they met Brigadier Ville. Brigadier Ville had been sent to command the enlarged Sparrow Force. You probably know that there were some ships that left Darwin and there was an American field artillery company, I think. They were bombed at sea and turned back, and they were still on the boats in Darwin Harbour on the 19th when the Japanese made the first air raid. I don't know. I think the command should have passed to young people about my age, and we would. Anyway, Rofe saw this, and he said to Ville, look, we're not combatant troops. We would have no idea how to defend ourselves even. So Ville let them go, and they went up onto the north coast. and they made friends with the T Marines who sheltered them. And I think they were there about 2 or 3 months before they were picked up by an American submarine. Now, if you read Peter Henning's book, I think that says they were picked up off the south coast, but they weren't. They were on the north coast, so that this submarine was pretty brave to get
into that area.
They were right down there, and it staggers me that all that Brian Rafe got out of it was an MBE.
Now you were involved when you had direct contact with the Japanese. Is that correct?
Me?
Yes.
Yeah, I was.
Can you tell us about that? Was there something to do with an armoured vehicle? Did you have an armoured vehicle? Or?
Yes, we did.
Yes.
And 2 Bren gun carriers. Should I mention names of people even unfavourably?
Well, I think we're recording history, so...
Okay. The platoon commander in the headquarters company of the 2nd 40th Battalion was a fellow called Wilf Nicole. He disappeared. I came to acquire the last armoured car and be responsible for 2 Bren gun carriers. I'd become fairly well known to the second in command of the 2nd 40th Battalion, Ron Campbell, Major Ron Campbell. He turned up in Timor with the reinforcements somewhere around the middle of January 42. He did not come in the original draft because some people were down south on leave. It was Campbell who got me to... No, start that again. Also around the middle of January, they set up a combined defence headquarters on Penfui aerodrome. The reason for that was that probably Japanese agents were cutting telephone wires and communications were bad. Our radios had not been tropicalised, and you should see the speed with which fungi grow in... It was just hopeless. So communication was pretty well knocked out, and the company, the 4 battalions of the company were in different places around the Dutch end of the.
The 4 companies of the battalion.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And then there was the fort at Clapperline.
Yes.
Where the guns had not been properly mounted and they'd not been proved. They were never any good anyway. So there was a need to set up some central command post. I was, for some reason, I think probably because I'd been acting adjutant to Bill Veal, I was the army officer put in this command post. The head was Wing Commander Headlam, who was the CO of the 2nd squadron. There was another fellow there called Jock Birchall. I think he was a flight lieutenant, but he was a return soldier from the First World War. And I have written about him when we were first shot up. You think everything's going to be aimed at you, and he was quite urbane about it. So we tried to imitate him and make out we weren't scared, but of course you're scared, you're apprehensive anyway. So when Campbell turned up, he could see that we needed to more thoroughly reconnoitre the area, and he sent me from the command post to Champlong to reconnoitre that whole area. It was actually during the fight with the Japs that the Colonel asked me about this, and I could describe how the roads went around, and how if the Japs were in Champlong, the hospital would point at